My name is Desiree Gezentsvey, and today is the 4th of April, 2020. And this is a brief commemoration of my father who survived the Holocaust, specifically the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. I'm at my home, as is the rest of New Zealand and most of the world, as we're going through the coronavirus pandemic. So here's hoping that in the not too distant future this will just be a memory and that everyone's well and back to normal life. Missing my children and my grandchildren's cuddles very much. My father, Volf Sterental. He was born in Ismail, Bessarabia, which changed hands between the Russian Empire and Romania, in 1913, 10th of April 1913. His parents were very poor. They managed a pharmacy and they lived in a small room in the back of the pharmacy. And my father had to be sent out to live with relatives at different points because his parents just couldn't keep him. From what he said and from stories and letters written by one of his cousins, he was pretty much a genius. From primary school already, he could speak several languages, played several instruments, was amazing at sports. The teacher would send him to the front of the class to teach the class. That's the sort of kid he was. As a teenager, he was already looking at going overseas to study. And he did when he was 17, 18, he went to Italy, to Bologna University. Apparently there was an aunt that had gone to Italy, so she helped him initially to get settled. And so he was 18 years old. This was 1931 when he began studying his first degree at the university, which he graduated summa cum laude in 1933. At this point, the chancellor of the university or of the faculty requested a scholarship for him and was turned down with a letter from the fascist party saying pretty much that this was a subject non-deserving of consideration. He was a Jew. However, he managed to continue his studies and graduated from his second degree, which was industrial engineering, in 1936. Again graduated summa cum laude. At this point, he got a job in Turin at a metals factory, but continued with a third degree extramurally with the University of Bologna. So he started this in 36 and was in his last year of studies, 1939, when he received the letter that all Jewish students at the university received. The letter came on the 1st of February, 1939, saying that Jewish students would not be allowed to continue studying. But if you were in your last year, you were allowed to graduate. So my father was able to graduate in November of that year. I learned from his university records, which I saw when I was in Italy and went to the university and met with a professor there, that he actually had a fiancée during those years. He was engaged. So there's a story that I'll never know what happened with that relationship in the war years. One of the many mysteries, as I asked my father to talk to me about those years, but he only shared a few things here and there, as it happens with many survivors. So he was in Turin working at this factory, which Jewish people were not allowed to be hired. So at one point, one of his friends in the factory came and told him that someone else had denounced him, that there was a Jew working in the factory, and given his name. So thanks to this friend, he went into hiding and he joined the partisans. Again, not many details about this time or how long this went for, except that they were doing their best to sabotage the enemy, probably around the Italian Alps, which he loved very much. And then came the moment where his group was captured and he was sent to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Again, he didn't want to give me and my brother much details about this time, except the few things that he shared, the images that stayed in my head, and I will read a poem that I wrote dedicated to him. But when, after liberation, he was sent to Paris and he was given the card, the identity card, after liberation, and the card, which I will try to include some photos in this video, states that he went to Bergen-Belsen on the 20th of February 1944 and out after liberation on the 13th of April 1945. So that's over a year in the camp. He went back to Italy, and amazingly, the Olivetti, the factory where he had been working, had been saving his salary for the whole year that he was away. And a non-Jewish friend of his had looked after his property. So he had his belongings and he had this year of salary that helped him get on with a new life, get on with life. He found his relatives, and some of them had gone to Venezuela at some point, and they convinced him to go to Venezuela, move to the tropics, start a complete new life, which he did sometime in the late 50s. And he met my mom, Harriet Sayre. She was a concert pianist, and they met at one of her concerts and got married. And so my brother Rene and I were born in Venezuela. He was, I think, 48 years old, my father, when my brother was born, and named him Rene, which means reborn, and named me Desiree because I was so desired. This is what he always told me, which is very beautiful. I can't remember how old we were when we started learning about the Holocaust and that what my father went through. We never felt any hatred coming from him. In fact, he taught us to take each person for who they are, each individual, not to generalize. And he always taught us, above all, not to focus on material things. He said, material things come and go, but what you have in your mind and what you have in your heart cannot be taken away from you. He passed away over 30 years ago, and so did my mom. They had met my 3 daughters. My brother has 3 children as well, 2 daughters, 1 son. So that's 6 grandchildren, and so far 6 great-grandchildren. I'm going to share this poem that I wrote for him. It's called In My Father's Wardrobe. There was a wardrobe in his room that was locked always with a key, and we were not allowed to look in there. We had heard a bit about what was in there, some mementos of the concentration camp. There's a monster in my father's wardrobe. We've been told to stay away. There is mention of a blanket made of strands of human hair. Father paces through the night, whispering, Shema Israel. Ghosts of camps he can't escape, living skeletons with empty breasts, shivering bodies with shaven heads, weaving blankets made of hair. Dad forgets what he has said and refuses to say more, shoves the monster in his wardrobe, and in silence locks the door. Never again. And may our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and so on live healthy, happy lives.